Hi, welcome to Yoga with Lynn and Leo. This is day 13 of our 18 days of yoga. Lynn in the white top is doing the classic actions. Leo in the green top is doing the modified versions. You can see for this sequence that we have a platform for Halasana and Sarvangasana, and we have a chair, a couple of foam pads, a blanket, and a belt. Just make sure you've got your equipment ready with your platform if you haven't done so already, and then come and stand in Tadasana, mountain pose. From Tadasana, step or jump the feet wide, lift through the front of the pelvic bones, extend into the fingertips, lift your chest. Make sure that the feet are facing forwards before turning to the right. Bend the right leg to come for Virabhadrasana II. Extend into the fingertips. Make a square if you're able to with the front leg. Press firmly into the outer edge of the back foot and look along the ring finger of the right hand. Come up, turn the feet to face forwards, and we go to the other side now. So now the right foot turns in slightly, so about 15 degrees. You come up onto the heel of that right foot and rotate at the ankle. Turn the whole of the left leg and foot out. Extend into the fingertips. Keep the spine vertical as you bend your front leg. So in other words, don't lean to the left. You keep the spine upright. Keep that left hip lifting away from the left thigh bone. Extend both sides of the side waist and extend into the fingertips. Come up, turn the feet to face forwards, and either step or jump the feet back into the center. Come into Tadasana. Re-establish your Tadasana mountain pose. Take the weight right back into the heel bones. Lift the frontal pelvic bones up. Make sure that the inner edges of the feet are together. So we're coming now for Uttanasana. If you're working in the modified action, have 2 bricks or place a chair in front of you so you've got some lift to the hands and arms. Keep the frontal pelvic bones lifted and take the hands beneath the shoulders, either onto your support or onto the floor as Lynn is showing. Keep the kneecaps lifting. Extend back with the left leg and then stretch that left leg up. So this is a variation on Virabhadrasana III, Warrior 3 pose. Keep extending the front of the body and extend into the inner heel of the raised leg. Keep the back of the pelvis level. So in order to do this, you have to broaden the gluteal crease of the raised leg from the inside to the out. Release that raised leg down. Look forwards. Keep the lift through both legs. And then when you're ready, stretch back with your right leg, point the toe down, and then lift the whole leg as one unit so that the back of the thigh points towards the ceiling. Don't be tempted to lift the whole of that hip up, but keep the back of the pelvis completely level. Hook in the outer hip of the standing leg. Any of these poses which you find difficult, have a look at the later days, and there will be tutorials explaining the poses in more detail. Release the leg down and lift up out of Uttanasana into Tadasana mountain pose. We're coming into a lateral pose again now, so we're turning to face the front. You'll see that Leo, doing the modified actions, has got her mat right back against the wall for balance and has placed 2 bricks towards the back of the mat. From Tadasana, step or jump the feet wide. We're coming into Ardha Chandrasana, half moon pose. So this comes from a Trikonasana action, triangle pose. So we're going to be turning the left foot in, the whole of the right leg and foot out, and extending and lengthening with both legs straight to come into Trikonasana. You can see that Leo is taking her hand to a brick. Lynn has her hand to her shin. From here, we're going to take the top arm down and place it onto the top hip. Bend your right leg. Take the right hand forwards and lift the left leg. So extend that thumb about a foot ahead of the little toe and lift the left leg. Roll and rotate your top shoulder back, and then if you have your balance, take your top arm up in line with the bottom arm. Keep the left leg about in line with the left hip and extend into the inner left heel. Having the hand onto the brick helps to keep the chest open. So if you're having a problem with the hand on the floor, then raise the hand up. So we're stepping out of the pose, coming back into Trikonasana, and then lifting up from Trikonasana back into a standing action. Turn the feet to face forwards, and we'll go to the other side. So now you can see that Lynn is actually moving herself on her mat just so that she's got a little bit more space, because you do travel in this pose. So turn the right foot in slightly, the whole of the left leg and foot out, come into Trikonasana. Make sure that you maintain the rotation on that front leg thigh bone so that it's really inserting well into the hip socket. Bend the front leg, extend the hand either onto the brick or onto the floor ahead of the foot, and then step in with the back leg and lift up when you're ready. So this is a challenging action. Many of our students find this a difficult pose to do. If you find this a little demanding for you, then have a look at day 14, that's tomorrow's sequence, where we are looking at this pose in a little more detail and approaching it from different poses, which means that you have a different access into the pose. But at this stage, you can use the brick and the wall to help you. So bend the front leg, extend back, and come into Trikonasana, triangle pose. You can place the top hand down onto the top hip to get that roll of the shoulder back, then come back into Trikonasana and then lift up, pressing firmly into the outer edge of the back foot to get that lift out of the pose, and step or jump the feet back to Tadasana. Re-establish a good Tadasana now. Have the inner edges of the feet together, press down into the outer edges of the feet, spread and open your toes. We're coming now for Virabhadrasana 1, Warrior 1 pose. So you can see that Leo is going to take a couple of foam pads and place one on each side of the mat. This is for the heel to lift up onto. It makes the pose a little softer on the lower back, and also it helps with the turning of the back foot, which is a very important aspect of this pose. So from Tadasana, step or jump the feet wide. Get this intermediate action well by lifting the chest, pressing into the outer foot bones, lifting the frontal hip bones. Rotate the arms in their sockets and take the arms up by the ears with the palms facing one another. So we're going to turn the back foot in. It turns in more than it did in Trikonasana or Virabhadrasana II. So we turn and rotate onto the ball of the foot, and if that's not sufficient, then you lift the heel and place it onto the foam pad, or just lift the heel and turn it. The whole of the pelvis turns towards the narrow end of the front of your mat, and then you bend the front leg, keeping the back leg strong and straight, extending down into that back leg heel bone, even if the heel bone is lifted onto the foam pads. Keep extending up with the fingertips, keep the upper arms close to the ears, and rotate the upper arms inwards. Come up, turn to face forwards, and we'll go to the other side. So you can see that unless that back foot turns in well, the pelvis cannot turn sufficiently. Keep pressing down into that back leg heel bone, keep lifting the frontal pelvic bones up, and bend the front leg. So the tailbone is long, the frontal pelvic bones lift, and the abdomen moves back to the spine, all the while keeping that back leg strong and firm. Come up, Turn the feet to face forwards. Bring the arms down, palms facing the floor, and then step or jump the feet back to the center. Stand in Tadasana, lifting the kneecaps, lifting the thigh muscles, getting the lift and extension through the spine, and just letting the breath steady and settle. Fine inhalation, exhalation through the nostrils. So we're coming into the next action now. You can see that Leo is now placing her bricks and removing the foam pads. So the bricks come to the right hand side of the mat if you're using them. Step or jump the feet wide. We're coming for Parsvottanasana, which is a forward bending action. If the bricks are not high enough, you can use the seat of the chair. Place the hands onto the hips, lift up onto the heel of the left foot, pivot on that heel so that the foot turns in well. The toes of that back foot should be pointing towards the top corner of your mat. Lift out of the pelvis and hinge forwards at the hips, keeping the back flat, taking the hands down onto the floor, as Lynn is showing in the classic way of working, or onto the bricks. Both legs remain straight. You extend the breastbone towards the narrow end of your mat. Lift up through that front leg kneecap, thigh muscle, and press firmly into the back leg heel bone. One of the most difficult aspects of this pose is keeping the back of the pelvis level. So you need to lift that front leg, kneecap, thigh muscle and draw the thigh bone back into the socket, pulling it back further than perhaps you think you need to. Coming up out of the action, if you're using your bricks, you can bring them with you and place them to the left-hand side of your mat. Turn the right foot in deeply, the whole of the left leg and foot out, and turn the pelvis. You can use your hands on the hips to help to turn the pelvis towards the narrow end of your mat. And then hinge forwards at the hips, taking the hands to the bricks or the floor. You can take a quick glance at your front leg to make sure that that hasn't buckled at the knee. If the hamstrings are tight, then take the hands up higher. As I said before, you can use the seat of a chair. Also, if you don't have bricks, the seat of a chair is quite a good way to work. If you don't have bricks, you could also use 2 foam pads. Keep lifting through the front leg and extending back into that back leg heel bone. Make sure that your upper back is flat and not becoming concave. Keep the breath fine and even. Keep the quietness in the pose. Once you're there, be in it. We're coming out of the action now, so lift up, place the hands on the hips, and then step or jump the feet back into Tadasana, standing in Tadasana. You can see that Leo is positioning her bricks towards the front of the mat, and Lynn and Leo are turning for this pose, which is Parivrtta Trikonasana Revolved Triangle Pose. The legs in this pose have some similarities to the previous action, Parsvottanasana. So you step or jump your feet wide. The bricks, if you're using them, should be behind you. You turn your left foot in deeply, and the whole of your right leg and foot completely. Plant down firmly into your back leg heel. Lift out of your pelvis. Stretch up with the left arm. Take the right hand onto your right hip. Now, as you extend and lengthen, you're rotating the spine, and you can take that left hand down to your brick or down to the floor to the outside of your right outer ankle. You roll and rotate the top shoulder, and if you have your balance, you can take your top arm up. If not, keep that top hand onto your right hip, just working on the rotation. Come back into the center and turn to the front. Again, if this proves to be a challenging pose for you, have a look at day 15, which will be coming up in 2 days' time, And we'll be going into this pose, Parivrtta Trikonasana, in a little more detail. So we're going to be turning to the left now. Turn your right foot deeply in, the whole of the left leg and foot out. Turn the pelvis to face the narrow end of the mat. Extend up now with your right arm. Get that length and extension through both sides of the body. Both sides of the side waist need to elongate as you extend forwards and rotate, taking the hand down to the outside of your left ankle. Keep the back of the neck in line with the rest of the spine. So you should be looking forwards towards that narrow end of your mat, the front of your mat, rather than looking towards your back leg. If you're able to take your top arm up and keep your balance, then do so. This becomes a very pleasant pose to do after a little while, but it's challenging at the beginning. So don't worry if you're finding it a little bit difficult. Keep persevering. Come up. Press down into the outer edges of the feet and step or jump the feet back into the center. Next, we're coming into a seated pose. So we're coming down to the level of the mat. You'll see that Leo is getting a brick, a couple of foam pads to sit on, and she'll be getting the rolled blanket ready in a moment. So make sure that you have all your equipment ready. The 2 foam pads in Dhanurasana just help to lift the spine. So if you find that sitting in Dhanurasana, staff or stick pose, is challenging, that you can't lift the chest or straighten the legs, then certainly use some height. Lift through the front of the body. Have the inner heels together. Draw the toes towards you. And straighten the legs by lifting the kneecaps and pushing down on the very root of your thighs. We're coming now for a Marichyasana twist, so lift your left leg up and bring the heel as close to the foam pads or your buttock as you can. Take your right hand back either onto the brick or onto the floor and hook the left elbow to the inside of your left leg. Have the palm of the hand facing to the right. Keep the chest lifted and use both actions of both arms to get the rotation in the spine. Don't overturn the head, but keep the action coming from the rotation at the base of the spine. Keep the shin vertical and press firmly into the fingers of your right hand to maintain that rotational action. Keep the breath fine and even through the nasal passages. Now release out of the pose. Stretch the left leg out, re-establish Dhanurasana, and then draw the right leg up into a Marichyasana action. You can see that Lynn is holding behind the knee as she brings this leg up and holding onto the head of the shin to get the lift through the front of the body before taking the left hand around, extending and lengthening the right arm up and using that right elbow with resistance against the inner knee. Most of these twists require traction, and the traction comes from the body. So use that traction with the right arm pressing against the right knee, the right leg resisting that pressure and coming into an upright action with that right shin, and using the left hand onto the floor behind you or onto a brick behind you to add to that rotational action of the spine. And now releasing out, sitting back into Dhanurasana. So re-establish your Dhanurasana, make sure that you've got the length on the back of the hamstrings, the lift through the chest, and the straightness on those legs. Keep the facial muscles passive. Press down with the fingertips and extend the spine upwards, keeping the legs as strong as you can, drawing the toes towards you. So we're coming now into Malasana, Garland pose. You can see that Leo is staying sitting on her 2 foam pads and has got a rolled blanket just placed in front of the 2 foam pads. Lynn is sitting back onto the heels. So we're coming into this squatting action with the feet together and the knees wider than the chest. Lynn has rolled back into this from a kneeling position. In order to do this, you need to have your heels in contact with the floor or with a support if they don't touch the floor. And Lynn has extended the arms forwards. The chest comes between the thighs. So you can see here that Leo has lifted up from the 2 foam pads. She's got a couple of bricks to place the hands onto. The heels are raised up. The body is extending forwards and the inner thighs grip the outer ribs. Now with Leo, she's sitting up on a height here, but even on this height of 2 foam pads, it might be tricky for you to lift up off the support. So have a look at our tutorials if this is a difficult pose, which will be done in subsequent days. Again, the knees are wider than the ribs and the inner thighs grip the outer ribs. Let the head and neck release. You can see that Lynn has the head releasing to the floor in this action. Coming out of the pose, come back into Dhanurasana, either sitting on your foam pads or sitting to the floor, pressing down into your bricks or to the floor and lifting the chest. Make sure that you're opening in the chest, extending in the legs, ascending in the spine. This action will help you to prepare for the next pose, which is Arkarna Dhanurasana, archer's pose. You can see that Leo is removing the blanket and taking hold of her belt. Make a small loop in your belt if you're using it. Stay sitting on 2 foam pads if you're working in the modified action, and place the belt around the left foot, holding underneath that loop with the fingers of the left hand. So you can see here that Lynn is reaching down to grasp the big toes between the first and second finger and the thumb. Leo is just taking hold of the right big toe with the right hand. And you bring the heel back towards you and then lift the foot up. Now the elbow comes up towards the ceiling and you draw that toe towards your right ear. So your right big toe comes towards the right ear and the left leg stays strong and straight. Release out of the pose. If you're using your belt, then change that to the right foot and hold on to the left big toe with the left hand. Keep lifting through the chest, drawing the shoulder blades down as you bring that left foot back and lift it up. You lift the elbow and draw the leg back. Don't force this action. If this is too much at this stage, then sit in Dhanurasana instead and just work some more on your standing poses, which will always help with this openness in the hips. Releasing out of the action and sitting up. Coming back into Dhanurasana, staff or stick pose. This is like Tadasana in your standing poses. We come back to it to re-establish and to settle the breath and to find our center again. We're coming into the next action, which is a prone action. If you're working with the modified actions, then use a foam pad. If you're working without, then you can just lie flat onto the floor. So you can see that Leo is showing the foam pad here. So we're coming down to lie on the front of the body. If you're using your foam pad, you place it underneath the forehead. Otherwise, just take the forehead to the floor and then extend the arms forwards. So stretch back into the toes, extend forwards into the fingertips, and just let the head and neck release. Have the hands shoulder width apart with the palms facing downwards. And extend the toes away from you, feet hip width apart. Keep the breath fine and even through the nasal passages and extend into the inner heels. Just let the body release into this action, opening out in the armpit region and extending through the front. Keep the facial features passive and soft. Feel the parts of your body that are touching the floor and feel the evenness between one side of the body and the other. Become aware if you're rolling more onto your left side or your right side. Whether one leg is touching the floor with greater intensity than the other. One of the aspects of yoga is developing this bodily awareness, the awareness of where you are in space and in relation to your environment. So use this time to develop that awareness. Let the breath flow finely and evenly through the nasal passages. Become aware of the extension of the side waist. So again, is one side perhaps more extended than the other? Feel that opening in your armpit region. Alright, so we're going to be coming out of this pose now. So bring the hands to the side of the chest. If you're working in the classic version of this next action, Bhujangasana, then you will just take your hands down by your chest, as you can see Lynn in the white top is doing. If you're working with the modified action, place a rolled blanket underneath the pubic bone. Now we're going to start to lift. Keeping the hands in line with the chest, slowly start to lift up. We're not working necessarily to have straight arms in this action at this stage. The feet are pointing straight back and you're lifting the front of the body, Cobra pose, so you coil up like a cobra. It may be that at this stage you keep the arms slightly bent. But whatever you do, you're keeping your pelvis, the front of the pubic plate, in contact with your support or with the floor. Release down out of the action and just rest for a moment. So we're going to prepare to go again. Extend into the toes, lift your chest, press down with the hands, roll the shoulders back and down, broaden across your collarbones and start to coil that upper back. Keep the pubic plate, the pelvis, in contact with the floor or with your rolled blanket as you start to get this movement in your dorsal spine. And now releasing down again and rest down. You can fold your arms in front of you and just rest your forehead onto the arms. This just allows the breath to flow a little more easily. The next pose we're going to come for is another prone back bending action, Urdhva Mukha Svanasana, dog head up. So you can either stay in position if you're coming into the pose in the classic way, with the feet flat to the floor as Lynn is showing, or you can do what Leo is showing here, which is tucking the toes under. So in Urdhva Mukha, we actually lift the pelvis and the thighs off the floor. So lift up, straighten the arms, roll the shoulders back and down, create that space again between the collarbones. Keep the thighs lifted and active, the backs of the legs strong and straight. Releasing down and resting down. You can again fold your arms and rest your forehead onto your arms, just letting the back settle and steady. Allow the breath to stabilize now. Just release the facial features. Let the toes come together, the heels release apart. So we're going to be coming out of the pose now. So gently lever yourselves up onto your hands and knees. We're coming into Virasana, which is a kneeling action. You can see that Lynn is sitting between the heels with the feet going straight back. This is often very difficult for those who have tightness in the legs and in the hips. So Leo will show how we would teach this in the studio, which is on 2 foam pads. You place the 2 foam pads horizontally between the feet. The knees and the thighs come together. You use the hands behind the knees to pull the calf flesh out of the way of the fold of the knees, and then use your fingers to spread your toes. Place the hands onto the backs of the feet. So we're coming into a Garudasana action with the arms. You can see that Lynn has swung her arms and wound the arms around one another, taking the palms of the hands together. Leo is showing a modification of this action where the arms are just hugging onto the shoulders. This action creates opening in the shoulder region, but the winding of the arms round can be quite tough. So just mark which arm you have on top here, release your arms, and then we're going to go to the other side. So lifting the arms up and either swinging and wrapping or holding onto the shoulders. If you do this pose easily, then make sure that you lift your elbows and move your thumbs a little away from your face to create a little bit of challenge in that shoulder region. Those who are hugging the shoulders, work the hands around the sides of the shoulders rather than the tops of the shoulders towards your spine. Keep pressing down with the tops of the feet and the shins, gripping those inner feet towards your pads or towards your outer hips. And now releasing the hands, bringing the hands forwards, swinging the legs to one side, and stretch the legs out now into Dhanurasana. So again, we're coming back into this staff, rod, stick pose. Extend the legs away from you evenly, draw the toes towards you, roll the thighs in towards one another, press down with your fingertips into the floor, or if you need them, put some bricks underneath the hands to lift the spine. Alright, so we're now going to set up for the next action, which is going to be coming into our inversion. So you can see that both Lynn and Leo have got their platform ready. If you're not quite sure about Halasana, Sarvangasana, that's Plough pose, and shoulder stand, then do have a look. We have tutorials in our yoga pose directory, but also we'll be going through this in the next few days. So set your 4 foam pads up as a platform. You can see that Leo has a chair behind her because she is not going to take the feet to the floor. This is quite a difficult action when you first start in yoga. If your hamstrings are a bit tight, or if your chest is a little tight, shoulders are a little restricted. Make sure that your shoulders are on the support. The head is onto the floor. Approximately the base of the skull lines up with the front edge of support. Now you're going to bring your knees into your chest, press down with your hands and roll your feet either to the chair or to the floor behind you. So on an exhalation through the nostrils, roll into Halasana. Be on the very tips of your toes and support your back with your hands. If you find this a difficult pose to roll into, then do look out for an old video that we have, which is a tutorial on Halasana, which is called Halasana Tutorial for Beginners. You can look that up in our playlists. When you're ready, take one leg at a time, up into Salamba Sarvangasana shoulder stand or shoulder balance. Keep the hands pressing into your back ribs, extend into the inner heels and look into your chest. Again with Sarvangasana, if this is a pose that you're not familiar with, then do look at our yoga pose directory. We do have some tutorials and we have a playlist on poses that will help you to achieve Sarvangasana. Extend into your inner heels. Move your elbows in so that they're in line with your shoulders. And work your hands out of the back waist towards the shoulders, moving the thighs back and the sacrum into the body. So we're releasing out of the pose by taking one leg down at a time, either to the chair or to the floor. And then slowly roll down from Halasana and take the launch pad out from underneath the pelvis and place it under your head. You want to have your head and shoulders slightly elevated above the pelvis and rest with the legs bent so that the back is rested. Give yourself a few moments here just to let the breath steady and settle, allowing the facial features to soften. And now, when you're ready, come up out of the action. We're going to finish the sequence today with a supine Sukhasana action. So this is lying down onto your mat with your legs crossed at the shins, supported on your platform, and just reclining back into a supine pose. If you don't need a blanket under your head, then just lie back to the floor as Lynn is showing. However, if your head tips back a little when you're lying onto the floor, then a blanket can be a very sensible option. Make sure that the legs are crossed at the shins rather than at the ankles. Let the thighs release down. If you need more support than this, you can always place cushions or rolled blankets underneath the outer thighs. Rotate the upper arms at the root. Draw the shoulders down away from the earlobes and turn the palms of the hands so that they face the ceiling. Just let the fingertips curl in towards the palms of the hands and let the center of the palms feel heavy. Change the cross of the legs. If you're using a blanket, make sure it's just underneath the head and the neck, that it doesn't come underneath your shoulders. Relax your throat. Release at the base of the jaw. Let the tongue be soft and allow the cheek muscles to relax. Soften around the eyes. Relax between the eyebrows and across the forehead. Where the eyelids touch, let that area be soft, don't tighten. Allow the whole of the body to release into the floor. Let your breath flow. We're going to come out of the pose now, but if you'd like to stay in this for a little longer, then please feel free to do so. Roll to your right side, rest on your right side for a moment. Even if you're coming out now, don't be in too much of a rush. Gently lever yourselves into a seated position. You can sit up onto your support if you wish to do so, or you can sit to the floor as Lynn is showing. Sit in Sukhasana, simple cross legs, lifting the chest, lifting the spine. Sitting quietly for a moment with the head bowed down, the hands resting on the thighs, just allows the mind to steady, the breath to settle. And it gives you a moment or two to come back into awareness. So thank you for joining us today and on these 18 days of yoga. We hope to see you again soon. Namaste.